Yes. It's like that's what they do on the roller coaster when it's clear to go. Thinking of amusement parks. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Ah, hi,
Good morning.
Peter. All right. I can hear you both very well. Well, officially to call to order the special meeting of the Coachella Valley Water District Board of Directors here in Palm Desert. It's June 15th, 2021 at 8 a.m. And would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. I'd like to make clear for the record that this meeting is being conducted by teleconference pursuant to the Brown Act waivers provided for under the governor's executive orders in response to the COVID-19 state of emergency. Today's meeting is presented in a hybrid format, both in person at CVWD's Steve Robbins Administration Building and via Zoom. The governor's executive orders N25-20 and N29-20 suspend certain requirements of the Brown Act, and district board members and staff may choose to participate in person or by video conference. The public may view this board meeting online, as there will be no public location. Is that still true for attending in person? Okay, so we'll change that for the next meeting. Okay, this meeting is being streamed live on the district's website and YouTube channel. Members of the public who wish to comment on an item within the jurisdiction of the district or any item on the agenda were given the opportunity to submit comments by emailing the clerk of the board or mailing comments to the district. Members of the public also have the opportunity to join the meeting via Zoom and provide oral comments during the meeting. And did we get any comments?
Mr. President, we did not receive written comments, and I do not show anybody on Zoom currently.
Okay. And then given that we have 2 board members attending remotely, I'll make sure to call on each individual as we have 1 action item, so we'll do it at that, and it'll be a roll call vote. And roll call, please.
Good morning, President Powell.
Here.
Vice President Estrada.
Here.
Director Bianco.
Here.
Director Aguilar.
Here.
And Director Nelson.
Here.
There he is.
There he is.
A little delay. So public comment, again, we don't have anyone commenting at this time. If we do get somebody who joins, we'll make sure to give them an opportunity to comment before action is taken. And so this brings us to our 1 item of action, which is to consider adoption of the proposed fiscal year 2022 operating and capital improvement budget, which the real punchline is it's a little over $450 million, which is a very large number. Presentation by Jeffrey Keel. Go ahead.
Thank you, President Powell, members of the board. I really don't have much of a presentation since we've gone through everything quite recently, since our last study session on May 24th, where we went through the entire budget. Very little's changed. Really only 3 items have changed since then. We added $135,000 to the West Replenishment Fund for IID surcharge. 1 CIP item increased by $249,000. That's for the Avenue 66 project in the domestic fund. And that's offset by restricted revenues. And the largest item is a $1.3 million decrease, but it's really just that reclassification from expense, or from a revenue to contra expense. And so the net change shows expenditures down by $916,000. I think the other significant item for the public is that, we would say we have a balanced budget on the backs of a $31 million decrease in reserves. I anticipate this will be the last year we have any significant spend down of reserves, but that's planned. I think it's important for the public to know that's part of the plan that's been in place for the last couple of years to strategically use reserves in order to relieve rate pressure that would impact our customers.
Right.
With that, I'll entertain any questions from the board.
And I would point out also that, like if you look at last year's budget, we ended up, our actual budget expenditure, when you take it, which is projected at this point, is about $20 million less, $21 million below what was budgeted. And so, it always seems that the budget is the far reach. I wouldn't call it worst case, but it's what if all the plans get executed 100%.
That's correct.
All the employees are employed, all that happens, then you get to that 100% number of 451. But it would not be a stretch to say that we come in $20 or $30 million short of that, given that you have unfilled positions or that we have portions of the capital program that don't get executed this fiscal year. And so, you're talking about the $30 million reduction in reserves. And honestly, that number could go to zero.
That's absolutely correct. It can go positive.
It would not surprise me.
It can go positive.
Just so that we know what we're looking at. It's not like we're writing a check today for $450 million.
The significant part of the 31 million is really impacts the overall cash and financial strength and flexibility of the district. Beyond that, it's all about individual funds and being really a total enterprise operation where the great bulk of our money is all generated internally. We have no mama to run to when things go bad. So each fund we have to make sure it's strong. I'll just mention as an analogy, we're out in the market right now on this Oasis bond, and I think what we're experiencing is an evidence of the strength of our financial position as others view it. We don't have a top credit rating for this one issue. We're at the fourth notch at AA because this particular fund is not the strongest, but the market's responding very favorably to our issue.
Yeah. Another thing too, just reading the BAI and considering all the presentations we've had up to this point. And you mentioned that we've seen the budget before, which is true. But the part that's not mentioned or included is on the April 21st presentation where we saw all the projects that make up, you had the motor pool ones and then we had all the other ones. And that's a useful reference for anybody that wants to see what is behind this number.
Yes.
Each fund has its own, really nicely done too, Carrie. I went back and went through it all yesterday, but each fund has its own list of projects. Some only have a couple projects, but some have more. And you can see the logic behind all of the capital projects that are included in this year's budget.
And it's not just spending $165 million of cash from rates. We've pivoted to using a great deal of restricted reserve money as well as a grant and loan activity, low-cost loan that's at an unprecedented level for this district.
Right. Okay. So without a presentation, and if anyone wants, what else are you going to say?
We have an update the last presentation.
Yeah.
If there's any particular questions that you missed from that May 24th presentation, we got updated the numbers, but.
So if you look at where the $600 million is being spent, There's a great deal of it, stormwater, 196 million, where we have the money.
Yes. And that's our strongest fund.
Right. I'm struggling on sanitation, on spending $215 million over 5 years. I'm struggling with the $600 million that, we have gone to a new category when the district didn't spend $500 million in 10 years. Okay, it may have taken us 15 years to spend $600 million. And so we're proposing to spend $600 million in 5. And I'm just wondering why the sanitation aspect, I mean, if you take that 215 and we cut it down to 100 million over 5 years and we spread those projects out, then we're looking at somewhere to spend $100 million a year average over the next 5 years, that's where I think we should be as a district. I mean, I think that's where we can afford going forward. I mean, these numbers are, I know we have some pressing projects, especially in domestic. We have some things that need to be fixed. We have some stormwater projects where we have the money, where we're going to put it to good use. This is pretty lofty to me.
Well, I'll just respond on that. In regard to the sanitation fund, we're getting ready to undergo the same effort that we just went through this past year with the canal replenishment and domestic funds, which really started with a very intensive review by staff and the board on all of the expenditures planned in those 5 funds, including extra focus on the CIP level that was presented. And you'll recall the presentation that was given back last October had, I don't remember off the top of my head, say over $100 million more of CIP being presented that was reduced by the time we got to the final numbers, which were embedded in the cost of service study and all the calculations that led to the required rate increases that the board has approved per the plan under Prop 218. So we're getting ready to do a 10-year cost of service study on sanitation, and we all anticipate it's going to be a similar process that we're going to go through. And you have before you the current projection on what the needs are for the next 5 years in sanitation.
We're doing a 10-year cost of service study for sanitation.
We're getting close to selecting the firm that will do that study.
And that is under 218. We have to do that.
Yes.
A 10-year cost of service study.
We don't have to do 10, but we're doing 10.
We're looking at a 10-year CIP.
10-year
It'll be a 5-year cost of service.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you.
If you shave $100 million, we cut the sanitation in half and we spread those projects over 10 years instead of 5 years, it really puts less pressure on rates.
Absolutely.
You may recall, Director Bianco, that sanitation is also paying for the non-potable connections. And we are requesting money from the state to help with that. So there is a match and then there is payback.
Right.
There's probably some projects in there that could be delayed. I mean,
Absolutely.
I'll tell you, here's one, Steve. I'm not picking on you or anything, but I mean, it seems like this one could be delayed. This is the Warp 4 Phase 1 improvements to get ready to supply, non-potable water from Warp 4 to the East Valley. Don't know that there's a big demand for that. Don't even really know that there's a big need for that. I mean, I get that it's consistent with our water management plan and everything, but I mean, that's 27 million and we haven't done much on that one. But those are the kind of things, I mean,
we have issues with the regional water quality.
No, I get it, but they're,
They're not elected.
The board is, the board isn't, they're appointed, yeah.
So
They should be.
we're only doing 1 year right now. So.
Right,
That's
budget
all
is-
we're asking for authorization right
Yeah, I
now.
understand, but a lot of these projects take years. And so what we pigeonhole ourselves in is that we get these projects started and then we're like, oh my God, where can we save money? Well, you can't save money on anything because you've already got the project started and you can't stop the project mid. So,
Well, that's why.
I mean, I've already learned that.
Yes, I understand, and we learned how what you guys think too. So we know that early on in that sanitation cost service study, we are going to get a representation of those CIP needs as well as the operating budget of that fund before you. So we can make sure that we get your feedback early on, and the consultant will be on solid ground on where they're moving forward. We want to have this resolved by the end of this next fiscal year. Now, we really don't, just on first blush, we're not anticipating the need for rate increases for that following year, but we want to get a good handle on the overall picture. And as Mr. Barrett mentioned, the whole aspect of the other funding that comes into that for loans is a key element on the financial picture.
You know, I just want to get to a point here to where we come up with numbers, say it's $500 million, and that's our number that we need, that the staff can spend over the next 5 years, $500 million. I think that's a lot of money for our valley to pump into new projects, and we figure out which ones are the most important. And we kind of start to live, I see us slipping to a point to where we're, I don't know, I guess living above our means in a way.
Well, we want that too. We want that too. I think
I mean, we have to have some
the
constraints.
little disconnect is we start with looking at what we anticipate the need is, so, as opposed to what can we afford.
I don't think it's that easy to cut some of these. I'd still think that one maybe we could delay, but the Warp 4 one. Not that we're going to do that today, but when the project comes up, you know, I mean, at least make sure that we don't get too deep into that one before.
John, what document are you looking at?
I'm back on the April 21st presentation.
The capital projects.
Yeah, you can go click on your SIRE and it's there.
And there's a slide for each project.
Yeah, in the sanitation fund. I think it's the last of the PDFs on there. April 21st.
Fine.
Well, he's got his SIRE downloaded to his.
Oops.
I don't have an iPad.
I mean, I'm scrolling through the rest of those projects. I mean, I don't see, a lot of them are pretty
Morning,
timely.
Carrie.
Good morning. President Powell, just to your comment on the Warp 4 project. This
Your
year,
mic?
this year we're just planning to finish the preliminary design, which is a 30% design, so that we can get a project description, so that we can finish the EIR, the environmental report. And then we would move into, we would bring it back to you to do, to request your permission to do the full design. And of course, we would always bring
Right.
it back to you before we would bid it out. So
Right. Yeah.
there's several more steps to go
Yeah,
through
I mean, I
with
think that one,
project.
let's take a closer look at that one. I mean, as far as it's something we're gonna do, but maybe it
Right.
can be delayed a little. That's 27 million right there. It's a big chunk.
Right, but for this year, it's,
No, yeah, for this year, I mean, doing the environmental, that makes sense.
I have a quick question for Jeff.
Sir.
On the staff report, it kind of talks about the CIP budget, and I think it kind of tries to give a sense of the different funding sources. And it has about 4 bullet points, and it does make mention of about 10.1 million of the domestic fund for system expansion. And I'm just wondering if that money has already been baked into projects, or is that still to be determined by staff as those projects, you know, get to a point where we need to make decisions on how to pencil the budget together? Or do you have a sense of that now?
It's in the budget, so we are planning to spend that money. And again, if you were to go back to the April 21st slide presentation, you could probably get a sense of what those projects are. I don't know whether Carrie knows off the top of her head where that 10 million will go, but she's nodding her head vertically. So I'm going to turn the floor over to her for a minute.
Yeah.
So it's to finish a couple of the reservoir, or 3 of the reservoir projects that we've started. And then it's also in there for the Avenue 66 project.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. President, I'd just like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
First of all, I think, kudos to the staff for developing these numbers and presenting this to us. One thing that stood out to me in reviewing the budget, not only this time, but in previous discussions, is that there has been no increase in personnel, which I think is remarkable, and I think it's a clear message that has been given from the administration to the staff that, that's a key area that we're concerned about. I mean, there have been increases in personnel, but that's been due to COLA increases that the board has already approved, and increases in insurance and things that we don't really have any control over. But I think, the workload is not decreasing, and if anything, it's going to be enhanced. So I think that's pretty impressive that we're remaining at 569 full-time employees and no increase in the number of employees. So I just wanted to point that out. I think that's a good thing to recognize.
Thank you. Boy, there are an awful lot of projects in that sanitation slide. I've been thumbing through them the whole time.
Well,
but a lot of them are the non-potable
the
connections.
non-potable, and a lot of them just have minimal amounts, like 10,000, 15, and that's because it's to finish the environmental and the loan application for the Clean Water SRF grant, loans and grants. So, as I've talked about before, we currently have the Hobley Lane connections and the T1 pump station under construction. That was $33 million. $5 million of that's a grant. The other is a loan. We have our next set of non-potable water projects in with the state right now. We're waiting to hear back on a funding agreement, and we're working on the design of the next step. So that's why there's a lot in there.
Yeah, I get it. Keep you busy.
On that presentation on the sanitation fund on slide 64, is there a reason why those first projects are in bold?
They're the projects that are underway.
Right, so the 5 that he's looking at are the T1 pump station replacement, the Oasis Country Club connection, the Woodhaven Country Club connection, Palm Desert Resort Country Club connection, and the Bermuda Dunes Country Club connection. Right. And those are pretty much already, the contract was awarded. We had a pre-con in early May, and the contractors on site.
Yeah, the contractors on site. If you drive down Hobley, you will see orange cones and work starting.
And that's
are the rest of those projects, is that the total that it's going to take to connect them, or is that just anticipated expenses for fiscal year 22?
I think it's just the anticipated cost for fiscal year 22. If I remember correctly, the contract is actually a 2-year contract. It's not scheduled to complete until late in 2022 or early 23. I can't remember right now.
Yeah, the only reason I mention that is that you look at the rest of the projects and they're, below 100,000.
Mostly design.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to get a sense of whether that's, full cost or just a portion of some cost. And then all these projects here, I mean, it's a lot of projects. Are all these being, for the most part, carried through the grant that you're pursuing, Carrie, with the SRF, or is some of this being carried by the West RAC, or sewer or any other fund?
No, all the non-potable water projects are being funded through a loan or a grant through the Clean Water SRF. The West RAC has its own project, and there's only one in the West RAC. It's Palm Desert Replenishment, Phase 2. And so sanitation pays back the loans for the non-potable water projects, but there's no sanitation PAYGO funds being used for the non-potable water projects for the construction, I guess, if I said that right, Jeff.
Vice President Estrada, and I apologize that you can't get to the website, but there is another attachment on the April 21st study session. It's the draft 5-year CIP, and behind the summary sheet is a breakdown by fund on how the projects are being funded, whether it includes PAYGO, proposed water system backup facility charge, or grants and loans for domestic.
Okay.
So
I remember that attachment. It was a long list. I remember it. So
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
thank
it's
you.
got all the
I'll go back
detail.
and look at it. Yeah.
And just for the record, Director Estrada, the website is backup. IT was able to get that backup, so you should be able to access online now.
Thank you.
The number is about 95 million of the CIP is funded by loans, grants, or restricted reserves.
95 out of what?
Out of 165.
Okay.
So that was a point I wanted to make is that this is at a higher level than it's ever been before. And of course, 50 of that over a period of couple of years is related to the Oasis project. But, that helps explain the significant jump in the CIP.
I get why we have 165 million for next year.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't get is why we're proposing to spend 605. So, I understand that we have peaks and valleys. So some years the capital CIP may be 165, but the next year it may be 75. That's what I don't know how this doesn't make the two board members that have been here for so long nervous that you guys haven't spent this kind of money your whole term ever here.
My answer, maybe Peter's been longer, but my answer is some of these things we've been sitting on, staring at our pile of cash for a really long time and haven't done the projects. And these are projects that we know we need to do. Maybe that one and more. Steve, I'm going to keep picking on you, but it's everything driving toward our sustainable water supply, and if we don't, or stormwater protection, if we don't do it, then it kind of begs the question: why are we here? We have these rate structures and tax revenues. And we have the funds to do it, and we know we need to do it. So voting against it to me would be like saying, well, I don't understand it, because I think all right, Steve, you're at the batter's box here. Here, take a swing at this one. Why do we need to do that Warp 10 project?
Warp 4, and I think it's a
yeah.
great example of the job we have to protect our greatest liability, which is the proper treatment of wastewater and disposal. And the regulations are, we are currently disposing of that wastewater to the environment right now. That stream is impaired. The list of contaminants it's impaired by is growing. The requirements are in front of us that will require much more expensive advanced treatment than it would to recycle that water. So it is in the best interest of our customers to eliminate that waste discharge. That's what the federal government wants us to do under the Clean Water Act. So spending some money now, if we are lucky to be successful with the Work for Recycle Water project, we will save our customers significant funds in the future. So
compared to having to treat it before we release it.
Advanced treatment, much more costly just to dispose of it in the way we are currently doing it.
Now I remember you made this argument before. Yeah, I get it.
So it is a long-term commitment. And remember, that facility is going to be our largest facility. The growth down there is going to be greater than the growth at our Palm Desert facility. So we're setting the stage now for huge savings down the road.
So this is water that can be then used on farms to irrigate crops.
Recycle, dual-use systems, future development, irrigation, yes.
I get it. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Well, and it'll come back, so we'll have another look at it. Anyways, that's my answer. I mean, it's just that I think I've been looking at a lot of this stuff for a long time, wondering when are we going to do it. It's kind of like, you don't want to die with bullets in your gun. I mean, that's how I feel. Is that we got a lot of bullets in our gun and we're not using it to yeah.
As a former military guy, I can relate to that
Yeah,
analogy.
you gotta, make use of what you have, and we have it, and we know that the regulators are, in some cases, are requiring us. I mean, definitely SGMA is requiring a lot of these things. If we don't sustainably manage this system, then we're not doing our jobs. That's my take. I don't know, Peter, you probably have you've been staring at this longer than I have.
So it's interesting, the thoughts brought up here. For such a long time, we were a pay-go district, and that, we didn't do a lot of projects because we were, pay-as-you-go, and that incremental cost or income that we had, we put away, and as it got to $300-400 million, we would spend some down, and I think our long-term average was about $100 million on that. And the board, as a decision, as a group, we voted to do a lot more of advanced funding and going out and searching for grants and running up these bond projects and to use that money instead of a pay-go system. Borrowing money, issuing bonds, and so forth. So, it was really the general board's direction to head this way a long time ago. And so, in order to, keep on that trajectory, there's a certain amount of mass there. And so it looks like we're in the next couple years. I mean, we have some big projects going on these projects with sanitation to, recycle the water and then serve and deliver the recycled water. And, that all goes into the sustainability of the aquifer. And, we're looking at, 5% allocation from the State Water Project this year. We'll get our 15,000 acre foot of delivery through the negotiations with MET and, of that approved water from down south. Colorado's third lowest runoff in history, with Lake Powell, headed towards 35-25. Lake Mead is we're currently in a drought 1 or 0 category. We're going to hit drought 1 next year, drought 2 the year after that. And, these projects that we're spending money on are projects that are, that will be able to supply a water supply that may not be available or is available on intermittent years. And so, it seems to me like this is the responsible thing to do, to have these projects to create a water supply with certainty and reliability. So those are kinds of the issues going forward. I mean, in drought situations, I mean, one of the big concerns that the board has had is, decimating the economy because of water and drought restrictions, and these types of projects are working towards having, some sort of soft landing or protection of the tourism industry that we have in the valley. So I look at this as being, responsible to the community, as, looking forward and being stewards of our water resources, both imported and recycled and reused water.
Director Nelson, I just, I've been with you the last 4.5 years. I was part of the spearheading the district to move to grants, loans, and bonds, because back then we were looking for to spend 80, 90, $100 million of PAYGO, and the board looked at each other and says, well, we can't afford 80, 90, $100 million. We can afford 50 or 75, but we can't afford 100. And so that's the direction we went. But I didn't dream that we would go to over 100. So that's where I get it. We have a lot of projects to do. A lot of them are back that we've been planning on doing for a lot of time, but we didn't have the money because we were PAYGO. Now we're going through a whole different outlay. I'm just worried about the 600 million, and that, I don't see this as a one-time thing. I think this is the new standard, and I think we need to get that standard of what we can afford as a district on capital improvements more realistic. That's what I'm trying to say. So I understand what all of you guys are saying.
Sure, if I may, maybe just a reminder that when you look at the 600 million over the 5 years, most of that is in this year and next year. And that's because of the significant projects that are being built using somebody else's money. We have to account for the entire expenditure in those 2 years. But as far as an expense to the district, it's spread out over the next 20 or 30 years. So while we're spending that money, it's somebody else's that we're using. And so when you look at the 3 years beyond the next two, it pretty much levels out at about $90 million. 98, 92, 96. So, again, unless we're going to get a large loan to do a significant project that the board wants us to do, I think those would be the only spikes that happen. And that's with the board's approval. It is more than we've spent before, but we've never had loans or grants that have allowed us to spend that kind of money. And again, it's spread over 20 or 30 years. So it's not the ratepayers aren't spending $165 million this year. EPA in the state are spending $165 million. The district is going to be paying that back over a longer period of time.
It's just what's changed is that we are completing our projects. So,
well, you've asked us to pursue project accomplishment in a different way.
And kudos to you guys. I mean, that for doing that. We're the ones who came and says, listen, we can't have a 30 or 40% success rate on capital improvement projects. We need to get this better, and boy, did we.
But if you want a smooth expenditure, record, you'll continue to have these peaks as work gets done in a 1 or 2 year period, but the expenses then spread over the next 20, 30 years. I don't know how to explain it, but I don't know that we'll ever have a smooth budget that also reflects the need to do large projects. But the large projects are funded by somebody else.
Different way. Just because we have $100 million in grants doesn't mean that we can spend an extra $100 million.
Yes, it does.
Well,
But it's spread over 20 years, so it's not 100 million every
look at
year.
our bond. I mean, we borrowed to build the canal and distribution system. And this is 72 years ago. Paid it off. I mean, this project is the first big expansion of that system. I mean, in my mind, it sort of finishes it. That something that was built 72 years ago, or finished 72 years ago. And now we're doing another big project to finish that off, which, by the way, we worked really hard in the late 90s and early 2000s to secure the water to put to that system. And we'd be damn fools if we didn't build the system. We need to do it. You know, I mean, this is build the pipes. We're underrunning because we have a little delay in getting some of this stuff built, but we need to get it built, and this is the time. I mean, so I don't look at it like 3 years from now we're going to do it again. We're not going to do that again. We did it 70 years ago, and now we're doing it, and now it's done. That's how I look at it.
So when you look at the financials of 71 years ago, back in the 40s, you know, during that year, the district would have put forth a proposal to go out and spend, you know, in the 40s, $250 million to put the canal in. And that was an expense that would have showed up at the board meeting. Hey, this year we're going to spend $250 million.
In 1940.
But in the 40s, but next year we'll be down at 5 or 10 million. I mean, so you know, when you look at, you know, what we're accomplishing with the projects that we have right now, we're going out and spending that capital improvement money, but it's going to get paid for over a much longer time than just next year. So you know, when you look at the operating budget, yeah, it's going to be impacted by paying back those capital improvement projects, but we've had a pretty well thought out plan with very cheap money, someone else's money at very low rates. As Jeff indicated, we're looking good in the market on that. So, you know, I think the plan, in large part, Anthony, what the plan that, you know, you've supported all along in terms of, you know, building projects that get paid over a very long time. It's just the sticker shock of seeing those amounts, you know, on the CIP budget today.
Okay, I mean, I really hope that you guys are here in 4 years so that we're not looking at, so that you guys can see how big the CIP thing is going to be. At the rate we're going, the staff in 4 years will give us one of $1 billion.
Well, I don't see anything in today's budget that puts us in a position that we cannot, that's not sustainable either financially or, you know, from our mission, which is managing the water systems and flood. Yeah, regional flood.
Okay,
To be
so
clear.
we're just approving this year.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We're not giving you a thumbs up for the next.
Well, you could if you want. No.
Just 1 year. I mean, you know, that's where when you look through these projects and see which ones are really finishing an old project versus starting a new project, you know, I mean, some of these we're starting new projects that are going to show up in next year's budget too, and we need to finish it. I mean, you know, I mean, some of this stuff is forcing our hand for next year that we're, you know, it wouldn't make sense to pause it halfway through, right? But, all right. So, but yeah, we approve the budget every year for 1 year. Are we, how are we? Are we ready to vote?
I'm ready.
Although I will say that Jeff has at times approached me to go to a 2-year budget, and I just don't think the board's ready to do that.
You're so wise to talk me out of that.
So Vice President Estrada, I just want to get your thoughts before we call for the vote.
I'm good. I don't see any issues. I think you and Director Nelson made good points, and it almost feels like, a lot of what we're doing right now is in large part to Director Bianco's kind of efforts to do it this way, and so which I think is a good idea. I think it's working. As you mentioned, it's cheap money. We're using someone else's money, and then we're spreading it out over 20 years, 30 years, and at good rates. And so, I kind of feel like saying thank you to Director Bianco for, pushing it this way. So, so I'm good. I think these are good projects, and I'm ready to vote yes.
Thank you. All right, so would anyone like to make a motion regarding item 6A?
I'll make the motion to adopt the proposed budget for 2022.
I'll second.
Okay, so motion by Director Aguilar, second by Director Nelson. And why don't we go into the vote? The roll call vote, please.
President Powell,
Aye.
Vice President Estrada,
Aye.
Director Bianco,
Aye.
Director Aguilar,
Aye.
and Director Nelson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, okay.
Thank
That's
you, gentlemen.
5-0. Well done. And I would say on the future, next year, if I'm guessing we're going to do this again, if you could include the capital
Yes.
in the, so we don't have to
Yes.
flip to the other meeting.
Oh, absolutely.
That would be really useful.
Absolutely.
You can
Yes.
just use the same slides.
Right. Yes, we will.
Yeah.
I
thank
appreciate
you.
that.
All right, so that passed 5-0. That's our-
On behalf of the whole staff, we appreciate the support that the board
Yeah.
gives us.
You guys worked so hard.
I thought it was
You guys never worked so hard.
really well orchestrated, the timing and everything. I really appreciate
It
it.
was remarkable. I'll tell you a quick story. When we were going through this bond stuff, I was on the phone with, I don't remember, ratings people or due diligence, but, we're talking about, the East Replenishment Fund, which is, tenuous fund. And they're saying, now, when was the last time you had rate increase? Was it like 5 years ago? And I said 3 words. I said it was Wednesday, last Wednesday. It was like, they were done right there.
Good.
So, we're in a good place.
Thank
We're
you.
in a good place.
All right.
Thanks.
Well,
Thank you.
I don't think we never did have any public participation. And seeing no further business and with no objection, we are adjourned.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you all.